Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Today, we have a special guest coming back, but before I introduce them, here is a quote just for this episode. Every customer is different, and that makes them special. Serve to their needs and create win-win relationships. Guardian Roofing and Siding. Our guest today is a good friend of the Culture Matters podcast, a staple in Culture Matters. Go back many years in some philosophies of thought over the world. Maybe we go back millennia. Robert Frehafer is the founder of Guardian Roofing and Siding. He's a giver, he's a healer, he's a lover. You've heard him before in the podcast. If you like me, and if you like him, or at least if you like one of us, you've listened to him and learned. Today, we're going to talk about the you in Guardian. Unique, among other things. Thanks for coming back to the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks for doing this 6 a.m.
Thanks for having me back, Jay. I appreciate it. As you're just doing another gracious introduction, it was just rising up in my mind just now that I really appreciate you taking the time to do this to have the time at 6 a.m. in the morning in a subject matter that really it is involving me, the company, the values of the company. Very pointed, and I appreciate you spending your time. So thanks, and good morning to you, and thanks for another awesome introduction.
Yeah, when you hear the word unique, what comes to mind?
So that's an interesting question. The simple answer is that unique is one of a kind, not like the rest. That's what comes to mind generally. But when we look at it from the standpoint of the values of the company and to utilize language, it's something that's been revealed to me that obviously the definition that's under the U on the wall and the way that we act in the company is different than if you open up Webster dictionary. So that's actually an interesting conflict that goes on based similar to what you said, what comes to mind. So that's what comes to mind for me is someone, and it doesn't even have to be a person. I'm very relational. A lot of my day and life and time is built around people, but anything, it could be a thing as well. Something or someone that is different, or one of a kind is what really rises up as what comes to my mind.
When you think of the Guardians, each person that's decided to dedicate their life to service in the way that your organization lives out service. Some of the are the people unique, or have we fallen into some of the critiques of culture that you hear in the marketplace of robotic conformism? Everyone walking in line, marching to the same drum, like those scary YouTube videos of military people in other countries. I'm curious, where does unique fall in line when it comes to attempting to get everyone on the same page in an organization? Are the guys and gals able to reveal their individuality through the organization, or have they succumbed to the organization?
So I'd like to, before I jump in to answer are the people unique, and or are they robots that that just fall in line, or are they able to reveal their um unique individuals, unique their individuality through the organization? I want to shine some light on the fact that it's really great that you're asking the question this way, particularly because of the fact that when um when these were created, and again, I will not miss the opportunity to give you due credit through your work in shadowing and riding along and seeing what we do as an organization, and spending a significant amount of time to do that, to be able to put to word what the actions were. And I really love that, how the values will mirror what's actually going on. And that, kind of going back to our last episode, where the culturally, it seems as if, my perception is that people just say the word because that's what they would ideally like to, but the values and the actions are not in alignment with the values. So that being said, I've looked at, not often, like all the way up until like the last couple of days, I looked at these values that I have. I've looked at them as from the company outward, right? Because and this one in particular even says every customer is different, and that makes them special. Serve to their needs and create win-win relationships. So I've always looked at these from a company outward, but I have recently, and I think it's because of the shift of over the last year or 18 months of being so involved in the sales side of things, and management and onboarding and processes, and which is going to get in alignment with what your question is. I'm looking at this more of both ways. It can be utilized from the organization or the leader and the people within the organization. So thanks for asking the question that way, because it's really cool that I'm just recently thinking about it. So
That's an interesting thought. Would you say, I'd like your thoughts on this, is that the alignment as opposed to a separation or dichotomy of values being almost marketing tools, lip service, and values being a gateway of behavioral evolution or behavior accountability? Something, it just comes to mind, right? If we're talking around values and thinking outwardly, which is very natural to do, and not inwardly. We may need both to have congruence in our behavior with each other and our customer. That's something that comes to mind when you bring up.
I almost think I might have lost you a little bit, but it sounded like you were saying, okay, they're useful. The values are useful for marketing to share what it is outwardly, and then behavioral.
We're like talking about our customer and reflecting on ourselves and our interpersonal relationships.
So that's what I was, and if I'm hearing you the right way or understanding what you're saying, that's what I've been using the values for. Like we talked about last one, I would be in a meeting and I would walk right over into the conference room, like, here, see this one on the wall. This is how our values are enacted through this circumstance that's going on in the business, or within two people in the business, or outside into the customer. So I think both of those, if I'm understanding you correctly, so there's a behavior accountability, as well as it's used for education, right? Marketing, education, whatever you want to say. And it's an attraction through that, because people that are attracted to that, whether it's a client or an employee, are going to be attracted to those values. So that is the like I want to say theoretical. It's not entirely theory, but that's the theory, is that the more that it's utilized, it's put on the wall just for the simple, the most simple usage, or spoken regularly or acted out. And then from that point, now it could go on social media, it could be on the branding that we do. People could be utilizing the word in the home or with their friends and family, like, yeah, this is the value of our company. So it's everywhere, from that standpoint. So does that answer the question?
What are some ways that, yeah, it does. Let's go even deeper, right? Like, what are some ways that you believe you've practically been able to, or not been able to, create a space for people to hold leadership accountable when they're not acting out or being the best they can be?
Yeah, so that really does tie in back with your other question. When we're looking at the organization, are the people unique, or are they robot, just falling in line, just doing exactly what someone says? And then can they reveal their individuality through the company? So the practice of those no, not everybody's a robot. I think that is in the organization that I'm a leader of, not everybody is a robot. And culturally, it's not, it hasn't exampled what the actions that would take place that would create only robots being there, which I believe, theoretically, because I haven't experienced it, would be to just keep turning people out if they don't fall in line. You just cut, see you, bye-bye, or degrade them, insult them. And even that culture, just the mindset of it, to me, is that then inside you have all these resentful people just walking around. But all that being said, no accountability, no oversight, no communication can still lead to the same end result. People that are resentful inside. But I'll digress. I will go back to what we were I want to go back to what we were talking about with this, because both of those are theoretical. Everybody is unique in the company. They do get to reveal their individuality in the company. And then to talk about the ways to hold leadership accountable. Before I go there, I want to dig a little deeper into those first parts. Individuality can be revealed while still, that is one of the very strong proponents of why to have the values written, why to be clear about them, why to talk about them, why to share about them. And I will reveal, I'm not saying like, oh, I've been leading through my written word and my values for years. Like, this is something that's really started to come. So I feel like I'm in the infant stages of what and where this can go through authentic living through the values, and utilizing them as the word and the tool to help navigate the direction of the company. So that being said, I think that I don't have enough experience to say how it will or wouldn't, but I do have enough experience. What I meant to say was, I don't have enough experience to say what's going to happen, because I don't have enough experience. But I do have enough experience to say what has happened through the small amount of interjection, if that's the word, involvement of it into my company, and then execution of utilization. This small amount of the usefulness that's come out of it, the small amount of implementation has created a large amount of reward.
Wow.
From my perspective. That being said, it does limit some level of individuality, right? Like it will shape the direction or actions, attitudes, and thoughts of the humans, right? I don't know how else to say it, of the individuals within the company.
Made me think for a second, like, I want to read this in the inverse. Every customer is the same, and that makes and therefore they are not special.
We do what we want.
Don't serve, refuse.
We do what we want. We create winning relationships for ourselves.
Is it negate their needs and create a win-win, create win-lose relationships where it's us first. Yeah, it's so interesting. I was watching a documentary on kind of the bubble, the Wall Street bubble, and the whole thing was about how the banking was just, it was the bank for itself instead of the bank and the customers. And they came up with this language like when you sell a derivative to a customer that doesn't help them but only helps you, it was called ripping their face off. It was like a language, like a phenomenon that occurred amongst the traders in this specific firm. They would have pride around, ripping the face of the customer.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. So that just comes to mind reading this in the inverse, right? Like, try to look at what it is in the opposite. Like, wow,
But
imagine what that does to the institution. What are your thoughts on that?
well, the very last thought that comes up to it, because you've asked the question before when we've talked in the past, and I was like, oh, I do this or do that or whatever. I don't remember the exact topic. I could give it some time to think, but I don't want to do that right now. But the point is, you were like, well, why would somebody do this ethical behavior when the other behavior can create a whole bunch of money? Right? That was your
that is a good question.
Your question. Like, it sounds like if you just do these other things, it was like lie and do what you want and manipulate and get this end result. Why wouldn't people want to do that? So similarly on this side, what we're talking about now is like, okay, why serve to the client's needs? Why do these things? Well, I believe that no, not believe. My experience has been that when I live that way, it's more rewarding. Now, I can say it's been rewarding financially. So I don't even have the thought that once the words that want to come out, I was like, well, maybe I won't make as much money. Maybe I don't make as much money. I don't know, but it's still been rewarding financially. But it's been the times that I haven't done that, it's definitely been a detriment to my mind and my heart, right? Like, so that's the whole thing with values, is that they're not learned. I don't know that it's been a epiphany or like a savant like learning, like this is how you do it, and you just act that way all the time. I think I've learned these things by acting the opposite way and suffering the end result, whether that's internal of, feeling bad, thinking bad, that taken away from my being or guilt, or not in alignment with my spiritual beliefs based off of the Bible, or the way that I saw that my actions impacted somebody else. So all these things are based, like, it sounds really nice. Okay, every customer is different, and that makes them special. Serve to their needs and create win-win relationships. The utility of this is that, like, okay, there may be a client that has $30,000 in front of you that wants to buy a project, but you know that it's really not in their best interest to do what you have for them to do, for whatever circumstance that could be, and to serve to their needs would mean not getting the job, right? It still can create a win-win relationship. It just might not be in the fact of money. So
that's an interesting point.
In our industry, it really, with helping homeowners through hail claims, a lot of the times there's very hard insurance companies that we know, like 99% chance, if this same situation on this house, the damage that was there, what was going on, if this was insurance company A, hands down, this would be paid. If this was insurance company B, 99%, this is not going to get paid for. So if we don't serve to that's a discussion that we have, I'm going to say weekly, I'm having with somebody like, well, what do you want to do? Like, because I really do want to understand, what do you want to do? Because as the leader of the company, if they don't want to work with that client, they don't want to push that ball forward, I then have to pick up the value and move it forward, find another sales rep that will help that client move forward. And then I will bring this value up. Like, you have to decide, is this for you? Is this your own selfish? Well, that's another value. Like, we're not going through our own selfish desires, but there's usually not a time when I'm referencing one without referencing another value. But yeah, that's a real scenario where it's like, crap, like, are you a guardian? And they have to self-reflect. Am I a guardian? And a lot of times it's because it's emotional. They get frustrated. I get frustrated with the insurance company or with the way that a homeowner acts. Because if we go back to even the first value, that we listen intentionally, communicate clearly, and educate the customer by telling the truth, and you couple that with the next one, we're serving to them now and creating win-win. These are hard things. Like, these are not easy actions. It's not just go for the softest course of action. So
Do you think it adds another level, or has the capacity to add another level of value creation because the industry has a level of opacity, a level of subjectivity, a level of there's a grayness.
yes,
And the reason the grayness is an inevitability in life. In many
this one is
contexts.
real gray, though, because every individual that comes out from the insurance company, even within a company, the individual, then they're the decision maker of these people are going to get their roofing and siding paid for. There is, from each adjuster, inspector, there's so many different subjective views that it's so emotional, right? There's work, there's energy, there's time being spent, and then we have to navigate this course of action. Again, this language of like, be a guardian, and we're navigating this homeowner through these 38 different trails that could potentially get to the end result of them having their stuff paid for to get new roofing and siding. So yeah, it adds a lot to what we do. It is, and it's something I would love to be able to remove that variable, but I haven't solved that one yet.
Wow. Serve to their needs and create win-win. How do you see a win-win actually happening?
Well, that's what I was touching on. It's not always that they get a job done and we make money. That's not always what the win-win is. The win-win could be, hey, you don't have damage and we're not a good fit for you, right? Or win-win could be that we educate them, like, this is going to be a long uphill battle here, and we're willing to go at this with you, but we need a commitment from you that you're going to be there to allow us to see it through based off our experiences all the way to the end, because it could be a lot of work steps, and if we go 90% of the way and it takes 6 months, and then they get frustrated, like, this is way too long, all my other neighbors have their stuff done, that's not a win-win. So when we understand each client, this could be that even to the end where they don't get approved for it and all their other neighbors do, but because of the way that we communicate with them, we understand how they would like to work with someone, they'll be referring us to their neighbors, even while it's going on and afterwards. And in many scenarios, people need a roof at some or siding at some point afterwards, and they come back and they buy one from us with their funds that they've accumulated or financing and things like that. So the win-win isn't, for face value, my own thought would be, okay, it's a win-win. They get what they want and we get what we want. But that's not always the end result. But there's many ways to end with a mutually satisfied parties. That's a win-win, right? We're both satisfied. And even if it means there's a relationship, because that is it, right? Even if we say, no, you're outside of the storm swath, there's no damage here, your roof still has a good 10 years left, we've created a win-win there, right? Like, we still have created that. But I don't want to skip over a very hard question that you asked, which was ways to hold the leadership accountable, but we can go back to that.
Yeah, let's close with that.
Yeah, okay, is that where we're at? So I don't even know. Right? Like, when you asked the question, I'm like, oh, that is a really good question. How do these values hold leadership accountable? And I consider myself leadership. There is one scenario that comes to mind where it was brought to me about the values that, and from a leadership standpoint, somebody that I'm the owner, right? I'm the CEO. So I guess so I am at the top of leadership. And it was brought to me and said, hey, the question was built around, what does somebody have to do to get let go around here? So I'm like,
I'm so
you know, that,
glad this is
so I'm
this is a
practicing my principles of like listening, understanding, but then like I'm emotional too. I'm like starting to feel like I'm getting boxed in, right? Like so I really it was a very nice opportunity from my perspective. It wasn't comfortable, but it was a good and it's what rises up when you ask this question: how do these be used for this thing? So for this, hold leadership accountable. So I was saying like with that question, I was getting into the responses and it became very clear to me like there's only been a couple scenarios. Somebody has stolen, money that let somebody go, and somebody was a very well, and this one was only temporary. Somebody was a very bad driver and coming in, we let them use one of the wrapped cars. They went through some 2 weeks of training. We let them use a wrapped car to go home. On their first day into the office, this is going back like 8 years or something. On their first day into the office, there were 3 calls into the office about this person on the boulevard that had flipped them off, cut them off, almost chased them down. So like when they got there, we had to like they were there to fill out paperwork to start work. And we had to let them know that this is not going to work in this capacity. And that person made a call, had somebody come to pick them up, and while we were, or a text, whatever, while we were like having this, he was like, I'll be back, and went outside and then like left. Right, like that was so. But the thing that makes me laugh the most about that, and really this is, I don't really think it's that funny. um this is my challenge with this. Sometime later, maybe 3 6 months later, a relationship was I still had a relationship with the individual, and an excuse was made about why I left, whatever, like these things were discussed and talked about. But I did invite him back to work with the company, and it was in a different capacity. He drove his own cars. He actually had a few people that worked with him. He was opening up like an Uber fleet, um, when he decided to come on with Guardian. So he had individuals that were already working for him. They went out, they generated business. There were definitely conflicts that came up because of my decision to continue to work with that person. Now, also along with those conflicts, there was, you could say, all right, there's money that was made. Yes, there was money that was made. There was relationships that were built. There was things that were learned. There was a lot of good, right? So as a business owner and an entrepreneur and a CEO, that is an area where I am like dialing in on like, how do I do this? What is acceptable? What isn't? How do I make these decisions? Because that's an area that's being revealed, that through hiring, through the accepting of people's actions or attitudes that are not in alignment with the values, how many times do I allow these things to go on before some change is made? And how do I then be aware of these things and then set the expectations when someone's coming on? So the point is that even when I was raised with the question, what does somebody have to do to get let go? There was one person I could think of that stole. Everybody else has pretty much let themselves go because of expectations that were set. They weren't making it, and then they left. And it would drag on longer than it should in some scenarios, based off of my lack of just cutting it. I would say that I had that ability and a responsibility for it. So when that was asked to me, that was through the values for a level of accountability to leadership. It was uncomfortable, but I did ask, like, what is it? Where am I not doing that with these individuals that were questioned, like, should be let go or not? And on my end, I was landing where I landed, which was that they we have a level of I have a level of responsibility to train and help people with problems rather than to just let them go. And that's an area where I'm working on with sales onboarding and training and figuring out, like, all right, what's acceptable? What is these monumental increments that need to be hit, and at what timing, so then somebody can already see they're not going to be a good fit. And I don't have all the historical data nor the training. That's my excuse, right? That's what I'm building. So that problem that's getting solved is where I'm at. But that being said, so there wasn't one particular value that was held up in the confrontation, let's say, in the accountability. So when I was asking about that, I didn't feel like, all right, this was a great use of utilizing these values. It did come down to, if this person's making you money, you're willing to accept anything, right? Like that was through discussion that was revealed. And I don't want to do that, right? Like, I think that there's some level of, I need to have awareness of that, because it is tied with the business, right? The business makes money, and that is why else, from an outside perspective, why else would I want to keep somebody around that isn't picking something up? But there is something else. There is just something inside of me that I don't look, just like I just said in the beginning, I don't look at this that, all right, I just know, everybody's different, they're special, serve to their needs and then create a win-win relationship. I struggled to get there, and I suffered the consequences of uncomfortability to understand how this value was built, and then if I live through that value, that's where the payoff comes. So if I recognize, and I'm pretty good at what I do, so I see like these positive things in people that I'm like, man, I want to shine a light on that. I want to multiply that. And then I want to help teach them to remove these other prickly parts of themselves. And that's the process. How do I reveal if somebody is willing and open to change, or they're just so closed to change and they're only going to do what they're going to do? And it is not, I have not found, and again, this is not an excuse to not make the processes, lay out the incremental boundaries of what it is. Because it's almost like a mini set of values in each position. Like on the wall, it's not really going to be on the wall, but it's an expectation between the company and employee of how there's to navigate their business and what's going to be a good fit. So that being said, that's a way that it's been used from to leadership. But I don't believe that this has been utilized enough, that even the people that would be subordinate to a leader in any capacity throughout the company have been educated enough on the values that they could then utilize them to hold accountability back to the leader in some capacity. So we're starting
to acknowledge you, though, because in that scenario where someone asked you that question, for a subordinate to feel safe to ask someone in a position of power a question like that, they'd have to be permitted to even do that. And if they don't, I think they're at least there's a correlation between one in a position of power that's creating an environment where someone feels safe to ask a question that could potentially lead to the truth. I'm going to acknowledge you in that, because how do values hold the leadership accountable? I think with an open mind and an open heart, we can hear the conscience, like we can hear our conscience. So the values, even the dialogue around them, can create self-awareness, and then there's a choice. Like you made a choice in the interaction with that subordinate to lean into that conversation, listen. Had you made a choice not to, who knows what would have not happened, and then what could have. Then there would be a separation between you and this person reaching out with information clearly, because that question, what would it lead to an emotional response? Because it's an interesting question. Yeah. It's as if instead of saying a bunch of things, they asked the question that led to the realization of a bunch of things that were or were not occurring. What I'm getting at here is, how does the values hold the leader accountable? One of the ways is just by well, they'll hold the leader accountable based on the openness of the mind and the heart of the leader, because it's the conscience. And then the more the leader is a leader, I think, this is my opinion of it, human interaction wise, people underneath them in the hierarchy will feel more comfortable to tell them when things are out of, oh, things are not going well. They'll feel safer to bring problems up. You do this artfully, so it's more of an acknowledgement.
Thank you.
We benefit from the accountability when our people are able to tell us the truth, how they see things. They're bringing information to us, what they think, what they feel. That sounds like a good example of you leading to that occurring and how you responded. I've seen that values, organizations investing heavily with intention to really leverage them for the betterment of the organization, and the accountability does not occur as a result. And I think there's a connection between the intentions of the leadership. Is it to be better people? Like, you really want to be a better person? Or is it to control the people?
Both. And I don't know that I agree with the word control, but influence, right? Especially in an organization. Like, from an organizational standpoint, there's a need to walk certain boundaries to work within the company. So that in that capacity, I believe that.
Fair. And let's say when the order is to grow on the behalf in the capacity of leadership, the outcome would be influence as choice. Control is no choice. That's the reason you'd have to actually care, and that might be hard for somebody like you to even conceptualize, because I think you have always attempted to be a good person, even, but maybe I'm off on that, but ultimately there are people that have very little interest in that. And so companies wonder why the values end up relegated to a human resource, whatever, and don't impact. And it comes down to how seriously the conversations are taken. And you walking in that room, showing people on day one, there's an excitement there, there's a relevancy there. You can't force you to do that. You can't fake that. You have to feel it and be integrated with the business. Maybe you sharing your testimony here will help some business owners think twice, and I think that's the case. But that's one of the things. I think values hold leadership accountable, proportional to how open-minded, like where's their conscience, because it'll influence their behavior, which will increase the likelihood of people coming back and saying and holding them accountable, like their partners, their employees. The accountability comes with the word. Like, can people down the line share their thoughts, feelings, emotions, and what's wrong with the organization and what needs to be solved? Or are they going to say nothing because they don't think their voice is relevant? And then there's an example of this it was a proven fact that when that NASA ship blew up in the 2 decades ago, that there was a guy down the line trying to tell everybody, hey, something's wrong, and they wouldn't listen to it. Or no, he said he didn't feel like his voice mattered, so he didn't say anything. He didn't push hard enough. So then all these people died. So in conclusion, what are your thoughts?
Well, with that, I have a lot of thoughts, but with that last statement, not in regards to the NASA portion, but in alignment with it, the employees, subordinates, whatever way, there's no way that I don't see a way that they would even bring something up based off of values if one, the value wasn't written, two, it wasn't educated to them, three, it wasn't in, I say plain sight. I don't, that can take a lot of different forms, and there was an awareness of what the values of the company are. So, and that's the same, and it's the same thing. That's just one leg of it, is from the employees up, or leadership down, either way, through communications or outwards to the customer, but or the community, really. But the other point where you spoke about how the leadership, it has accountability through the values, well, definitely not if it's not written, spoke about, considered on a regular, I'm not saying every 5 minutes, but even on and depending on how regularly it's visited, will have a direct correlation to the impact that goes on for the leadership from the values. And I would take that from a biblical view again. If I don't ever pick up the book and read it, it's not going to have an impact on my heart and my mind. I'm not going to see the world through this paradigm. And now that's a living book. You know, my belief is living. God is going to impact me through that reading. That is one of the ways that I can truly understand and know who I am, who he is, who Jesus is, what he did for me, all these different things. Well, that same theory, right? It will, I don't want to say theory. That's been my experience, even with that's why I say, with the limited amount of utilization of understanding, reading, talking about, putting it out of the values, I've had a great result so far. So the point is, the argument would be that it will never be a conscious for a leadership if it's written once, put on the wall, and not or put on, even worse, put in the website and buried in there through a mission, value, purpose, goals, and it's just there, and all of those things are not continually revisited, which supports many things that you have explained in regards to.
It led to me to think this thought here. The leadership is held accountable by the employees' words, meaning, are they hearing the information? And to hear the information, they have to be responsible, able to respond openly. And when they're not, the marketplace will hold them accountable.
Well, yes,
right. That's spoken. So we stop listening to our people. We stop trying to figure out what's going on the ground floor, because the people are interacting with the customer. And then before we know it, eventually we lose market share, we lose profit, we lose everything, because we didn't know that there was an issue with the product. There was an issue with the assembly line. There was an issue because the people are the ones that are down there in the trenches figuring out what's working, what's not working. Their words give us information. When we're responsible, we can hear that information, and their words will help hold us accountable relative to our responsibility, ability to respond. And when we're not able to respond, it's going to eventually show up, because they actually can't hold us accountable. We can hold them accountable, because accountability would be like, goodbye, yeah, bye. It's like a cutting off. Responsibility is the relationship. Accountability is the cutting off. And the words, like sharing information, can cut off, can change ideas, which changes the actions and outcomes and all that. But That's something that comes to mind when you put it, when you shared that story and this idea of how values help leadership in their accountability. It can increase self-awareness, increase the ability to respond to information down the line, uncomfortable information, not fun information, maybe, negative information, not associate that negative information with the person, but the circumstance, and then work together as a team to solve to the problems that make value for the customers. And when that process breaks down, then there's less customer value, and then there's going to be less meaning, and it's all kind of connected. In closing, what are your thoughts?
So it is something that it's coming together in multiple ways. But like from a business standpoint, if you go out there and you do a bunch of business and you impact people, you can get some Google reviews and things like that. Then if you really start to put yourself out there through all the forms that are available through social media, video, YouTube, website, utilizing technology, you cast this wider net that people are able to then respond back. And if you're not doing well, there's an ease of informing the masses of what's actually going on well and what's not. But the part where it really is impactful for this discussion, the thought is that the more the values are spoken of in an organization and broadcasted out from the organization, especially by the CEO, right? That is when I Google what the heck the CEO does, like that is to cast the vision out to the community, and as well as internal. But all right, so it goes back in alignment with what I just said. The more that they're talked about, the more that people understand them in or out of the organization, the more that it's revealed, and there's a standard that's being set, that of an expectation for a client or employee, and community. So if people hear this and then they see something that's not in alignment, there's going to be a higher level of comfort for someone to come back and make a review or send something in like, hey, it doesn't seem like this is what's going on, which is exactly what you're saying. But I'm just saying it, I guess, from a applicable way, from the industry standard. And there's a level of, again, I'm a human, right? Like, so there's a level of emotion there, like, like, what are we doing here? Which I think that the pro, it's all a pro, because any good that's shared and an attraction from client or employee from these discussions and casting out the vision and values, that's great. And any report back that's of a misalignment or action mistake that's gone on that's impacted somebody negatively, we have an opportunity to learn, educate each other, whether it's leadership, an employee, or however that would be. We get a chance to, so it's positive either way. Coming back, I view it as positive. It just may not be comfortable, like you were saying. Like, it's not easy content, it could be harder content to manage. So that's another thought in that. Now, I do think that we talked a bit about values and a little less about, the ins and outs of the particular value, but it's reflective of what is not said in that writing. What we talked about is very reflective in a lot of these different scenarios. It's reflective of what's not said in the writing right here, because when we apply that to even what you asked about, employees or guardians that come into the company, and how do we navigate that? Well, I have to look at it from that perspective now. There's different ways that could create a win-win. It could be a win-win where they don't end up working here, because from a leadership, you want to attain help and have employees and moving forward. So it's been really good to talk about it. Thank you very much. I know this went a little longer than you had budgeted, but it's been really impactful for me, and I always appreciate spending time with you.